पूरा देश की गाड़ी को खत्म कर दिया नितिन गडकरी ने। अभी मारिया और कल नहीं आया कंपनी में पक्का ताला हम मार दिया।
तेल उसके अंदर एथेनॉल ब्लेंडिंग जो है वो अराउंड 20% है।
ये देखिए इसमें कचरा भी है,
स्टार्ट ही नहीं होता है,
स्टार्टिंग का भी प्रॉब्लम है।
हाँ।
हाइड्रोजन फ्यूल पे तो तुम चल सकते हो भाई, हम लोग कहां से चलेंगे बताओ ना।
These are people who say their cars and bikes have suffered after using ethanol-blended petrol. For months now, falling mileage and concerns about vehicle performance have become a national political flashpoint. But the union government has repeatedly dismissed these claims.
अब कोई भी पत्रकार देश का और कोई भी व्यक्ति, 4 लोग बताओ मेरी गाड़ी खराब हुई, मैं ऑटो वाले कंपनी को टेस्टिंग करने के लगाता हूं और जो कुछ होता मुझे बताइए, जिम्मेदार माने बताइए कहां है, कोई गाड़ी नहीं है।
Recently, vehicle owners gathered at Delhi's Jantar Mantar holding placards that read, "Hamari Gadi, Hamara Adhikar. Our vehicle, our right." These two have been dismissed as politically motivated.
ये पॉलिटिकली मैनिपुलेटेड झूठा प्रचार है।
Union Minister Nitin Gadkari, who by the way is not the petroleum minister, has been the most prominent face of India's ethanol push. And he has asked journalists to show even one vehicle that has been damaged.
मेरी गाड़ी इथेनॉल की वजह से खराब हुई है, 3.5 साल पुरानी स्कोडा स्लाविया।
Others, like journalist Rahul Shivshankar, have defended the policy by arguing that ethanol-blended petrol has been in use for years. If it really caused widespread damage, where are the millions of affected vehicles? But these arguments don't answer the questions that matter. Why has the report by the Automotive Research Association of India not been made public? Why is E20 becoming mandatory instead of allowing a choice? And why has a fuel that was promoted as a cheaper alternative not translated into lower prices for consumers? In this episode of Let Me Explain, we'll examine the science, the economics, and the politics behind India's ethanol experiment. Let me explain. Every episode of Let Me Explain starts with a simple question. What do the facts actually say? And when someone says, just trust us, asking to see the evidence isn't being anti-national, anti-government, or anti-policy. It's just common sense. And that's what Let Me Explain is here to do. If you want more reporting that follows the facts instead of the noise, support the show through the link below, or you can scan the QR code on your screen. Your contribution helps us spend less time chasing clicks and more time chasing answers that matter. Also, don't forget to follow LME WhatsApp channel and become part of our community. First, let's start with what the ethanol blended petrol program or EBP really is. Ethanol blended petrol is not some new experiment. Many countries have used it for years. India too has had ethanol blended fuel for over a decade. Until recently, petrol sold in India contained 10% ethanol or E10. Many vehicles, especially those made in the last 10 years, are already designed to handle that. Now, India has moved to 20% ethanol blending or E20. And the union government wants to increase the percentage even further. The government says the expansion has reduced crude oil imports, saved foreign exchange, lowered greenhouse gas emissions, and strengthened farmers' incomes. Even if all this is taken at face value, the obvious question is this: can vehicles actually handle it? The answer is yes, but with conditions. Modern BS6 vehicles have been redesigned to run on E20 fuel. Manufacturers have upgraded engine components and software to make them compatible, but there is still mileage loss. The government's own numbers from a Niti Aayog report in 2021 say exactly how much. If your vehicle was built specifically for this fuel, expect to lose 1 to 2% mileage. If it's an older model, expect a drop in mileage of 6 to 7% for cars and 3 to 4% for bikes and scooters. Nobody disputes this, not even the government's own researchers. But that's basically where the easy agreement ends. Because if the science is settled, everything that's happening since raises a very different set of questions about money, about trust, and about who's actually benefiting from all this. So let's start with money. If this fuel gives you fewer kilometers per litre, shouldn't it cost less? This is a question no minister has so far really answered. Ethanol used to be the cheaper option, but it isn't anymore. The government's 2021 roadmap had recommended pricing ethanol blends lower than petrol and offering tax reliefs specifically to make up for that shortfall. But none of that happened, and now consumers are paying full price for the fuel. The roadmap also clearly said that E10 petrol should continue to be sold alongside E20 as protection-grade fuel for older vehicles. It pointed to Brazil and said transition took 30 years and E10 is even now available. But if you own a vehicle that runs on petrol, write to me at lme@thenewsminute.com and tell me if you are given the option of E10 in your petrol pump. If you've had any experience with E20 petrol, I want to hear from you. Has your mileage changed? Has your vehicle stopped? Or has nothing changed? Tehseen Poonawalla, the political analyst who led the Jantar Mantar protest, has rightly asked why the secrecy around a report prepared by ARAI. Now, ARAI recently held a press meet and said E20 is safe, just the small drop in mileage. But then, Times of India broke the story just 2 days later that the report also says that if E10 compliant vehicles use E20, then rubber parts and fuel component systems will deteriorate. This includes hoses, gaskets, seals, and O-rings. This has never been revealed by the government. The question is why? There's another layer to this as well. The government recently announced zero excise duty on future ethanol blends, framing it as good news for consumers. So who really benefits? That would be mostly oil companies, ethanol producers, sugar mills, and grain distilleries supplying this fuel. Now, that's not necessarily wrong as a policy, but it needs to trickle down to the consumer. The other concern is the fuel itself. Ethanol naturally absorbs moisture from the air much more easily than petrol. That means storage and transportation becomes far more critical. Think about the journey fuel takes. It leaves refinery, travels in tankers, and is stored underground at petrol pumps, and then finally pumped into your vehicle. At every stage, especially during India's humid monsoon, there's a risk of water entering the fuel. Even something as routine as opening a tanker at a fuel station while it's raining can introduce moisture. If enough water gets into the fuel, the ethanol can separate from the fuel, and this affects the fuel quality. Recent reports from Mumbai during the monsoon have raised precisely these concerns. So while E20 works in theory, it also demands a much stronger fuel distribution and storage system. Then there's another challenge. India's roads are full of older vehicles. A vehicle is legally expected to last at least 15 years. But many vehicles made before the BS6 era were never designed for higher ethanol blends. Some may run without any issues, others may not. Higher ethanol blends can loosen deposits inside aging engines because ethanol is an effective cleaning agent. Now that sounds like a good thing, but in older engines it can dislodge sludge that can then block fuel systems. And here's the biggest problem. If your vehicle develops a fault, proving that ethanol was the reason is incredibly difficult, even if it's possible. Without proper testing and documented evidence, it's almost impossible for an individual consumer to establish that a particular engine failure was caused by higher ethanol content. Now, in the ethanol controversy, why does one man's name keep coming up again and again? That man, of course, is Nitin Gadkari, India's road transport minister, and for years, one of the loudest cheerleaders for ethanol. He isn't even the petroleum minister. That's Hardeep Singh Puri's portfolio. Back in 2013, Gadkari's Purti group, then running sugar mills and ethanol plants in Nagpur, were raided by tax officials over a web of shell companies. A scandal that led him to step down as BJP president at the time. That business has since been restructured. His sons, Nikhil and Sarang, now run it under new names. Cyan Agro Industries and Manas Agro. Both have posted extraordinary numbers, revenue and market value, up by thousands of % over the last 20 years roughly. The opposition has called this a straightforward conflict of interest and demanded a Lokpal probe. And it's not just the economics. Maharashtra, which is Gadkari's home state, has sugarcane farmers who are happy with the policy, and that gives him political brownie points. Gadkari, of course, denies any wrongdoing. He points that his company accounts for less than 0.5% of India's total ethanol output, and that ethanol pricing is set by the cabinet and not by him personally. That is true, and also somewhat besides the point. Even people opposing him on other grounds like farmer leader Raju Shetty and NCP SP spokesperson Anish Gawande have acknowledged that hundreds of sugar mills and ethanol producers across the country have seen the same windfall. But the fact that it's a small market share doesn't erase the optics of a minister's own family cashing in on a policy that he spent years personally championing. So what are the experts suggesting? Not abandoning ethanol, but making the transition more gradual. Brazil, which is often cited as a success story, took more than 3 decades to make the transition. India should have continued to sell E10 fuel alongside E20, especially for owners of older vehicles until the transition was complete. Because the debate isn't simply about whether ethanol is good or bad. It's about whether India's vehicles, fuel infrastructure and consumers were all equally prepared for the transition. When you're asking crores of vehicle owners to simply trust a transition this large, refusing to publish the evidence you keep citing isn't just a minor process complaint. It's a real, legitimate gap between what the government claims and what it's actually shown.